So let me go and start with a little disclaimer here because this might turn a little bit ranty, but I do want to emphasize that I really like this game. The combat especially is some of the best fun I've had in a while. The moment-to-moment gameplay is super satisfying, and I love the emphasis on team play. If I had to give it a score out of 10, I'd give this a solid, very strong, firm 8. It's a great game. But I do feel like I would be more inclined to give it a higher score if it weren't for some of the issues I do have with the game, which I'm going to talk about here. So hey, if you do like the video by the end of this, if I could earn your subscription and your like, it'd really mean a lot to me. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a quick question. Did we really need War Elemental? There's no question about the power of this sigil. My brothers and I were talking one time, and we pretty much were discussing how it kind of felt like one of those drops that would come from a final boss at the end of the game's content lifespan, kind of like Fatalis gear back in Monster Hunter World, kind of to signal your mastery over the game. And right now, being this early into the game's lifespan of Granblue Fantasy, it feels like unnecessary trivialization of the elemental system. Within the game this early, any future content regarding elements won't matter, as most people probably will have this sigil on them. That means that any elements the bosses will have don't matter because you're going to have war elementals to counter it. And in the future characters out there coming through, well, their element's not going to matter because you're just going to put war elemental on them. So with that in mind, I'm actually kind of curious why they even bothered putting elements in the game in the first place. Now, let me say this. I'm not trying to sit here and hype up the elemental of the system in the game. It's not really that crazy, but it was a boon when you were that elemental weakness to that enemy. In fact, there's a fight with Pilot A where you can destroy his generators and leave one that switches him to the element that you're weak against, that he's weak against, right? It's an interesting mechanic that allows the player to have some kind of strategy in the middle of a fight, if they so choose. They could have built upon this system in some kind of way for future fights and found some way to, well, I guess I'm not sure why I'm even like bothering to continue on. It's not going to really matter anymore. It's no longer an option, right? Because people got War Elemental, and they're going to have to start making these bosses with War Elemental in mind, right? There's also a thing about War Elemental that is that it's basically extra damage for free. Unlike Tyranny, Stamina, Immunity, all that stuff, etc., this right here doesn't really have any downsides to put it on. In fact, it even goes past the damage cap. There's actually no real decision making in whether or not you equip it. So it takes away that agency from the player, and narrowing down how much control you have over the build of your character than damage cap already does. And like I said, it bypasses that damage cap by virtue of how elemental weakness works. So with that in mind, making the decision to not equip this sigil is basically just making a decision to deal less damage. There's no two ways about it. That's really all you're doing. And worst of all about this thing, I feel like, is that it literally solves nothing, right? I honestly would much have preferred that they bring in they have some kind of sigil that if you equipped it, it changed how you played the character, right? There's like some kind of interesting way to do that instead of just more raw damage. As it stands, it's literally just a better attack sigil that boosts you past the damage cap. It's literally, there's no reason for you to equip it, not equip it. But here, I can keep going on and on about that thing, but let's go ahead and move on to the next deal. These characters in this game are freaking bugged. Let's start off with Fairy, for example. Damage appears to be oddly scaled all throughout her moveset. Based on how the game presents her, you think you were supposed to fight around medium range, trying to deal damage with the tip of her whip, which is what the game tells you, in fact. Only, well, this is what you're actually doing. Because of how oddly her damage has been capped throughout her moveset, she's actually doing a lot more just spamming those two attacks, the launch and the smash back down. 2 attacks all day, every day. The other tools she has going for her aren't doing nearly as much, especially since this combo generates her SBA gauge way faster than anyone else. It's to the point where I think everyone is on the same page and saying this is obviously unintended balancing. Personally, I don't really play like this, honestly, it's even more boring than it sounds to play, at least for me. I don't know how everyone else feels, though I'll be real, I do feel like kind of an ass when I play online, and I think people are expecting me to play that meta style and generate all the SPA for them and trivialize the fight, only to then realize I'm not really doing all that much more than them. There are other examples with other characters such as Percival and his skill cancel into his charge attack. This makes him do way more damage than obviously intended, as he's getting his main attack for free infinitely. Hopefully they've looked into at least some of this stuff and won't get this stuff fixed ASAP, because honestly this game kind of needs it. You can already get so absurdly powerful, and some of the exploits you can do with these characters because of how bugged they are definitely isn't really intended for the balancing. And honestly, I don't know if they're even really like what is the word for it, taking this kind of stuff into account when it comes to future bosses. The next thing is something I hope they can expand on, and that's the non-boss missions. And what I mean by that is that I mean the missions where you're basically fighting a bunch of mobs in a single area, oftentimes in waves. This kind of content is their weakest, and I think they understood that, since by the time you get to Maniac difficulty, bosses make up the overwhelming majority of what you'll be doing in the game. I think the introduction of dungeons similar to what they did with the story would prove to be a great addition to break up the boss spam. These can be like differing scenarios as you run through, with a mid-boss and a final boss. They could bring in a mission similar to that one where you get into dogfights with other airships and board each other, of course with heightened difficulty and new encounters. I think that'd be pretty cool to see translated into a multiplayer mission with the mid-boss and final boss. Of course, this goes without saying, they have to, equalize rewards for that kind of stuff, make it worthwhile. Now this next thing though, this is something that has to happen, man. It's so annoying, at least for me. Maybe everyone else disagrees, but this for me is something that I wish they can freaking fix up. And that's when it comes to the damage cap. They need to rebalance that. Now, honestly, the damage cap by itself is a fine idea. The issue mainly lies in its implementation. It is far too easy to hit that cap on your damage by doing the bare minimum. And that bare minimum is leveling your masteries and your weapon. It was pretty often I'd find out a character was being capped in their damage even when I had only their weapon equipped. No sigils. Damage buffs from allies and yourself, as well as defense down debuffs on enemies, end up nearly useless at a certain point, since they can't push you past that low damage cap. This leads into a requirement of you having to increase your damage cap through sigils and other means, removing any of that agency from the player of determining their build, and even removes much of the diversity between different characters themselves in terms of how you build them, as you'll be having the same core sigils for each with only a few to fit your own style. Yeah, that one right there, short and sweet. Hopefully they can fix it to some kind of extent, give us some more freedom in how we play the game and things. It's kind of annoying to kind of have all of these choices of sigils and everything, but then it's like, oh, well, you're not really going to get any value in much of those sigils unless you invest in the damage cap and max that out. But for this next one, oh boy, this one right here is going to be a freaking doozy. I feel like I'm going to get some heat, but I think it has to be said. You can fight me on this one. I'll debate you in the comments even. Potions in this game are unnecessarily powerful, way too powerful. As it stands, there is no reason to have healing spells in the game due to how reliable they are. You get ones that heal you almost to full, which is the mega potions, I believe. Ones that heal you to full, which is the green potions. Ones that heal the whole party and increase your link gauge while doing it, which are the blue potions. And you get the one that instantly revives you when you're down. There's even a sigil that boosts the number of all of these. I think like even triples how many revive potions you get. You get like 3 of them now. Just instantly revive yourself 3 times. Don't even touch your critical gauge bar. It's already super generous, right? Also, they replenish before every mission. You don't have to buy them or anything like that. You just get them. You don't have to worry about them. You always have them. Also, there's no real risk or decision making to using them. They're instant, so you can take hard hit that takes away 90% of your HP and sends you flying, but heal yourself back to full before you even touch the ground. You can pretty much brute force a lot of the content in this game. This actually reminds me of another game, Dragon's Dogma, back in the day. That game allowed you to instantaneously heal through your menus and everything, and it also had healing spells in the game as well. Thing about that game is that they kind of balance it out. Potions took up a lot of your weight, so you had to kind of had to balance around that. And then healing spells, couldn't heal you past your fatigue limit, so it was always worth it to have potions on you, and it was also worth it to have a healer with you. That way you're not taking up all your weight with a bunch of potions. But this game right here doesn't really have anything like that. It's just, you just use your potion and it's free. I don't know if they should tone them down yet, but they definitely make healing in the game obsolete and useless in comparison. Now, that's not to say that healing is unviable. I've actually gone through the entire game with offline without using any potions and built my team around working together to take down the content. I've only had maybe 3 failures before hitting Proto Bahamut and getting S++ my first run on it. And those 2 failures were because I didn't know a boss had a DPS check, which was solved by the SBA. But honestly, how would you even bother doing any of that? Just use your potions. Replace all those healing spells with actual damage. You're not risking anything doing that. And combine that with all the damage boosting abilities in the game that pretty much become useless because of the damage cap. And now you have some characters where almost half of their abilities aren't worth using. But like I said, I do want to see how they handle future content before I kind of delve into, hey, let's just get rid of potions or nerf them and things like that. But if I had to freaking lay my foot down a law, I would go ahead and say that I think they should tone them down and boost the reliability of healing spells. Punish the player in some way for taking enough damage to warrant the use of a potion with the breathe animation, possibly. Just enough to make the player make that decision of whether or not they want to hold back to heal while the team covers them or keep dealing damage. This is well balanced in Monster Hunter. Having a healer in that game is straight up a boon, but you weren't punished for not having one. And with it done this way in this game, having healing spells becomes a bit more of a boon, as you can then be more confident to deal that damage out because you got a healer covering your back. Now let me go ahead and just stop right there. Those are just some of my thoughts on everything. I do have a lot more I want to say, but I don't want to make this video too long for you guys. But hey, is there anything you wanted to add, or maybe there's some stuff you guys disagree with? Like I said, I freaking debate you. I was kidding. It's all in good fun. Let's have a discussion about it and stuff like that, right? So hey, go ahead and leave anything you guys have to say down in the comment section. Hey, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.